I don't think I've seen you this giddy recently over any new movie that's come out.
That's probably
I,
why. It's just like, oh wow.
yeah.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures all what a hit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my good friend Steve, and this is one of our Halloween spooktacular episodes. We are talking Coralie Faja's The Substance.
Hey, but you know the drill. If you haven't already subscribed, it'd be a great favor to us if you did. Just go ahead and hit that subscribe button, ding that little bell, and that way you're notified every time we drop a new video. James, do you notice the atmosphere that I've established for our spooktacular? Just
It's
the
sending
mask, and we've got the little skeleton guy here. We
sending
spare
chills
no
down my spine.
expense.
It really
No
is.
expense at Deep Dive. We can use our budget very efficiently.
That is, it's quite the atmospheric sort of immersion tank there. Yeah, it's terrifying, quite frankly.
Actually, true story. I came out here early in the morning, and when it's all dark, this thing kind of glows in the dark. So
That's creepy.
I'm laying on the couch at like 5 a.m., and I swear I had to go take this thing down. Scared the shite out of me. And Ethan, when he heard about it, laughed. But then I showed him when it's all dark. He goes, "Oh no, that's way too freaky," and takes it down. It doesn't seem so bad right now, but when it's just staring in the dark at you, oh man.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that being a problem for me too, as well, especially sort of as I'm living on my own at the moment. So it'd be like,
Yeah.
not what I want to see at a 3 a.m. toilet call, but for sure. Okay, right. Coralie Faja's The Substance. I'm so glad that I was able to convince you to go and see this. I know you're not traditionally a horror fan. This is something, it's one of my long-term projects of this series is to get you to watch more and more horror movies. This definitely fits into that category and then some. So, I've seen this film a couple of times now. Absolutely love it. One of my favorites of the year. You just got out of a screening of this a couple of days ago. What did you think?
As you said, not just horror, but body horror in particular. What the Cronenberg type filmmakers do.
Yeah.
Obviously, this isn't Cronenberg, but it's the same genre. What can we do to contort and just demonstrate the human body in different
definitely
ways?
Cronenbergian
And
for sure.
it's not normally my thing, but I will say the underlying message of aging and our glorification of youth culture and what we are willing to sacrifice in our own lives in order to achieve the fountain of youth really resonated with me. Maybe it's because I'm 58 years old and I'm trying to turn back the clock whenever I can. So I was struck immediately by I'm a big fan of the old John Frankenheimer film Seconds with Rock Hudson.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It's a very similar premise where you have a mysterious company that offers you basically a new body, but we have yet to read the fine print.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a really good shout, actually. I think, for me, the obvious literary precedent for this is Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, or The Portrait of Dorian Gray, which is one of my all-time favorite books. A guy literally makes a sort of Faustian deal with the devil. He sees a portrait of himself looking as radiant and youthful and handsome as ever, and he goes, oh my God, if it weren't for the ravages of time, what if the portrait aged instead of me? And of course that's what happens, but there are severe repercussions here. You're absolutely right. It's incredibly Cronenbergian. I've been a huge Cronenberg fan for my entire film going life, pretty much. I love his explorations of the limitations and grotesqueries potential of the human body, what it can do, what lurks within. I think that's what it really taps into. It's like we know so little about the goings on beneath, literally under the skin of our own bodies, and he has this perverse fascination with literally tearing the lid off our own form and examining everything that goes on within it. And this, I think, more than anything else, is a Hollywood satire. We've been looking at every Best Picture. Our series, we've been looking at all the Best Picture winners. We very recently talked about All About Eve. There is a lot of similarities between that story of, the seasoned veteran diva who is being replaced by the young upstart ingenue. This just takes it one step further, where it is a clone of herself as opposed to just a young hopeful coming up through the ranks. And the director, Coralie Faja, does an amazing job. I think the one criticism you could level at this film is its is it's not particularly subtle, but then the subject matter is not particularly complicated. You know, the issue is not particularly deep or dense, and yet it pervades and persists and has done since the beginning of time. You know, there is an expiry date on women in the entertainment industry that there isn't on men, and that is bad. And the message is as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying this correctly, Corley Farage?
As far as I know, that's how you say it, yeah.
Okay. What I enjoyed was, if this had just been a voyeuristic body horror, let's see, you know, the person speeding down the road sees the accident and you slow down because you want to see something really grotesque. It's much more than that. It captured me right at the beginning of the film, where we essentially see the Elizabeth Sparkle, who is played by Demi Moore, essentially playing herself, an aging film star whose best days filmmaking were behind her. And the way that the filmmaker creates her whole career over the course of her Hollywood Walk of Fame star being initially memorialized and then forgotten and then broken as the years and the weather just chips away at it. And just watching that whole intro sequence, I was on board with this film the minute I saw that. I thought, this is really creative. I'm on board with, and I'll just put the body horror stuff to the side.
Yeah, no, she's a wonderfully sort of cine literate filmmaker. It's only, as far as I know, it's only her second movie. Her first movie was called Revenge, and is great. It came out in about 2017, I want to say, and is this wonderful story of, it's a kind of rape revenge thriller about a woman who survives an attack and turns on her attackers, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's pretty savage, but it was a hell of a calling card. As far as I know, that's her only other movie, but she's incredibly cine literate. She knows movies and she understands genre cinema. She understands her audience, and she knows that the people who are going to be watching her films have seen a whole lot of films. She's not going to try and pretend that these ideas are new ideas. Instead, what she's going to do is she's going to use a lot of sort of visual motifs and thematic motifs throughout her work to acknowledge and hopefully amplify the work of filmmakers that inspired her. And she's going to try and retool and repurpose those concepts into a sort of a new framework around ideas that interest and impact her as a woman, as a filmmaker, what have you. And so that opening sequence is brilliant because there's no dialogue. It's literally it's an iconic, as you said, overhead image of Elizabeth Sparkle's Hollywood Wall of Fame star being put in place on, one assumes, Hollywood Boulevard or wherever. We know that. We know what that means, what that entails. That means she's established. She is part of the elite, the celebrity elite of Hollywood. She is being acknowledged. She must have achieved a certain degree of stature. We don't need to see her rise to fame. Bang, put that right there, and it's immediately puts her on a pedestal, quite literally. And then, as you said, it fades, it cracks, people stopping to look at it and drop their burger juice on it and what have you. And it's a wonderful evocation of just her fading into the background. Yeah. And no sooner do we finish watching that than we have this conversation between her and Dennis Quaid, who plays the producer, her sort of employer, if you like, who says, you're over the hill, you're done. You've turned 50, you have expired. It's time to move on.
And even the juxtaposition between the Elizabeth Sparkle Hollywood star, I want to say star of fame, the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
You can just call it the star.
I keep confusing it with what we got here in Hong Kong. It's like we've got
the Avenue of Stars.
The Avenue of Stars.
Never quite took off.
I got two different names going on in my head. It's immediately juxtaposed because a person that gets a star like that usually has a very stellar career, very highly recognized. They don't get it for doing exercise videos, and so the juxtaposition where you go from, which has obviously been a very stellar career, and then suddenly she's doing exercise videos, you're immediately in your mental space is, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Right. And it sets up the whole situation for this Faustian bargain to unravel. And you mentioned it earlier about it being Faustian, but that is one of the most primal negotiation story devices in film, folklore, the Bible.
Yeah.
Jesus, with the devil in the desert. I will give you this if you give me that. And always knowing that what you're giving up is not exactly what you thought it was going to be. And I love even the voice that is on the other end of the phone whenever something's going wrong and they have to interact. There is no empathy. There's no understanding. It is purely business. This is a deal with the devil, and we are never, there's no misunderstanding there.
Oh yeah, there's no smooth talking, there's no comforting, there's no negotiation. It's just like, these are the rules, these are the facts, and I think the key part of that is hammering home the idea that you are not two separate people. You and your clone, here called Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, you are the same. What happens to one of you happens to the other, and there is, you are the same. Remember, you are two parts of the same person, and there is no going back. You can never turn back the clock. You can slow it down. That's the whole point of this. But there's no going back. And I think that is kind of crucial and integral to the whole psychology of the movie and what it's attempting to address.
Yeah. James, I have to highlight the sound engineering in this film. All I kept thinking was the guys that were doing the Foley on the substance were having the time of their lives. Whether it's Dennis Quaid eating shrimp with sauce, it's just gross. Him and the sounds that he was making was as disgusting as any of the body horror that comes later.
I mean, that's just the way it is. So you know me. People are just people, and I have to give people what they want. That's what keeps the shareholders happy. And people always ask for something new. Renewal, it's inevitable.
Hearing that slurping as he's getting orange around his lips, I'm like, and this is what really kind of added to, I don't know if impressionism is the right word, or a surreal feel in this film, where this reality is outside of our reality. This is something that's a little bit different. The way that the people interact with one another, the way the rules operate in the world around, it's just a little out of frequency from our own world. But it allows for these almost unbelievable situations to occur, and no one's asking any questions. If this had really played out in the real world, it wouldn't have gotten as far as it did. But the way that we're kind of in a different frequency, there's little subtle clues are given throughout the film with interactions between the higher ups, the Dennis Quaid character, the 12 all white guys that form the board, and they just all look like cartoon characters. Obviously, they're not cartoon-ish, but they are presented in a style that conveys this is almost comic book by nature.
Yeah, I mean, they reminded me of the boardroom in Barbie, where you've got Will Ferrell and all of these guys standing around discussing what's important, how this sort of female role model should look and dress and what have you to appease little girls. And there is no female voice in the room whatsoever. Obviously, there are also these sort of allusions to the Senate and, American politics right now at a time when women's rights are being taken away by old white men and all the rest of it. It's, you talked about sort of how disgusting sort of the Dennis Quaid sequence is, and, and I think that's, it's very clearly sort of saying that this behavior is just as monstrous as anything that Elizabeth might be doing in order to sort of preserve her career, preserve her relevance, and you're saying that this is just out of line with reality, it wouldn't quite go this far, but I mean, we're so nearly there. I mean, you think of the number of people, and it's not just women, the number of people who are willing to undergo sort of physical surgery, cosmetic surgery, other kinds of body transformation, just to look the way that they want to look or to retain their youthfulness. They're willing to sort of cut themselves and stretch and nip and tuck and all the rest of it. And it's like, well, what are you doing? You're just disfiguring yourself, really.
And most of the people who see this, most of the people who view it like in real life, none of us really think it looks that great. Whenever we see a star and they've had work done, it always looks a little artificial. There's something off about it. I rarely looked at somebody who's had extensive work done. and thought, oh, wow, they've really come out better for that decision.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that we're kind of at a point in culture where you're not supposed to comment on it, because it's almost been categorized as a mental health issue, which it very well be, but I think that's simplifying the matter and saying, well, clearly there's a mental health issue here in play, and so if somebody's had work done, you're not allowed to criticize it because, and it's like, well, you shouldn't really criticize how anybody looks at any time, and I don't think it's more or less relevant. So, if you're going to be a catty little bitch and you're going to criticize what someone's wearing or how they look, for me, it doesn't make any difference whether you're doing it before they've had surgery or after they've had surgery. Either you don't do it or you do it. And if you do it, then you can do it at any time. And I don't really see the problem here. But again, that is one of the issues in play here, is that not only is she being judged on her physical appearance, but she's being employed based on her physical appearance. Her relevancy in society, her place in society, is being is being graded solely on that. To the point that when Sue materializes out of nowhere, and this is like the great, well, it's the Hollywood dream, isn't it? It's that you are the unknown who comes from the small town in the middle of the nowhere, and you literally show up and you're made a star overnight. Again, based purely on how young, how nubile, how fresh-faced, how innocent yet sexy she is perceived to be, when you know absolutely nothing about them. Whereas someone who has built an incredibly successful, critically acclaimed career over decades and decades and decades will be pushed aside after a certain age for somebody that nobody knows anything about just because they look pretty.
And the objectification of women really comes across in this film. Some of the close-ups, we are left to know in certain terms that not only the age, but beauty. And this is something that's going to affect women far more than it affects men. The shelf life on these women's career is not what it is for men. I even have my wife telling me occasionally, because we're both in our 50s, she goes, so it's different for a man. She'll say men age gracefully. We all love gray hair on a man, or she'll say things like that, as opposed to women dye their hair, they do different things obviously to turn back the clock in a way that I don't think men can always fully appreciate.
It's become so, I mean, you just have to look at sort of the cosmetics industry. It's like women aren't supposed to step outside the front door without doing their hair and makeup and putting some perfume on and thinking carefully about what they're wearing. Men literally roll out of bed. I mean, I speak for myself, but, roll out of bed and literally make it outside, and it's already a success. It is an incredible double standard that is absolutely outrageous, and there is no excuse for it. I mean, I totally agree with you on the sound design. I mean, other elements of the film are just its gleeful willingness to go as far as it does, particularly in the third act, when young Sue, who's had a taste of life and doesn't want to go back. They have to do this weekly switch, which I think in and of itself is absolutely wonderful, where they have to be sort of drip fed in a cupboard in order for the process to work. And she makes that gamble. She's like, no, I'm going to fly closer to the sun. And it doesn't pay off, to the point where she's like, well, I'll do the process again on myself, and creates Elizathu Monstro, just this absolutely hideous kind of like second generation clone reconstruction that has parts of both of them in all the wrong places. I mean, it's absolutely like the finale of The Fly. Where it's all, or even the Thing, or even to some degree, I was rewatching Terminator 2 the other day, and the end of Terminator 2, after he's been kind of blown, it's a complete distortion and contortion. It's the natural finale of all of this effort. Just only serves to make you sort of more hideous, more disgusting. Yet she's still. I love the fact that in that finale, she still attempts to go and find her light. Stapling an image of Elizabeth Sparkle to her face. It's quite kind of wonderful.
The desperation mixed with the need for the spotlight is one of the things that makes this film just fun to watch. And that's why somebody like me, who, as I mentioned, doesn't really like these types of films, I was captivated by it. I want to ask you though, Demi Moore.
Yes.
Give me your thoughts on her.
I mean, I think you're right when you're saying essentially she's playing a version of herself. I mean, it must have been incredibly sort of difficult for Coralie Faja to approach any actress to play this part, because, you know, whoever you go up to, you're essentially saying, hey, you're over the hill. You know, you'll relate to this, you know, without sounding like you're part of the problem. I think she's perfect for it because, you know, she was so famous, so young, you know, really celebrated for her beauty. She has always been really, really tuned in with her body physically. I remember there was that Vanity Fair cover where she was 8 months pregnant and she posed naked, and everyone was in outrage about how can you possibly portray the female form like this? Yet she looks absolutely incredible there. I remember there were a lot of conversations when she went topless in Indecent Proposal. They were like, because she'd had a boob job, and they were saying, oh, you know, her boob. There was this whole conversation about how her boobs looked weird. You know, when she was doing the love scene on the kitchen floor with Woody Harrelson, and to have to sort of subject yourself to these kind of conversations being had in public by people who don't know you. Then striptease, she G.I. Jane, you know, she's always sort of reinvented herself physically and persisted and kept going. You know, I think one of the defining points of her life in recent years was her marriage to Ashton Kutcher, right? You know, a young heartthrob, decades younger than her. And everybody was like, you know, I mean, they have since separated and he's now with somebody else, you know, with Mila Kunis. But that was such a big deal for so long. And people tried to put a negative spin on that. So it makes perfect sense that she would be the one. And I want to just, as an addendum to that, Margaret Qualley is, of course, the daughter of Andy McDowell, a very similar figure. And so she has come up in the shadow of being sort of the offspring, the clone, if you like, of another sort of diva like that. One wonders whether they even, I mean, I think Demi Moore's a better choice for the senior actress. Margaret Qualley has that kind of baked in heritage, legacy to herself that makes perfect sense here. It was really, really well cast, really smartly cast. And both actresses do a wonderful job because there is an objectification to their performance as well, because obviously they both have to appear naked in unflattering poses for extended periods of time and all that kind of thing, which would put, I think, anybody off, really.
I absolutely applaud Demi Moore's. You know, sometimes we use the term bravery, and sometimes it gets used a little liberally. But I would say this was a very brave role for her to take. And for me, someone I know in our reviews and our unpacking, we like to talk about what we bring to the table. I'm just thinking the first time I saw Demi Moore was in St. Elmo's Fire in 1985 at the cinema. And, you know, and she's always, I think she's a little older than me, but, you know, going to university. And the film is about these young people in university. And that's why I've always kind of tacked with the Brat Pack. She was one of the first, the main Brat Packers. To see her go from Brat Pack to playing the older, over-the-hill actress, having to make way for a new generation coming behind her. I just really applaud her. I thought she did it remarkably well. And I wouldn't be surprised if this movie gets traction for her to see a bit of a revival of her film career.
For sure, and I would love to see her even get awards recognition for this. I mean, the Oscars in particular is particularly horror shy, you know, and horror averse. They don't like going there, but I think she's absolutely brilliant. I want to just flag the wonderful irony in all of this is like in the film, it's her 50th birthday, right, when the film begins, and she's being immediately tossed aside, when in actual fact she's over 60. Demi Moore is over 60, and I think that just speaks to everything about her enduring sort of beauty and confidence and power and whatever, that she can so easily, and which is the great sort of irony to the point that she's being tossed aside at 50 when she's actually over 60 and is looking so incredible and doing such fine work. So I would love to see this, you know, really, really revitalize her career and get some awards attention, because I think it totally deserves it. I think the fact that it won Best Screenplay at Cannes earlier this year, is a real step in the right direction. So I think it will definitely be in the conversation, but I think that it is so in your face. It is so aggressively gooey in a way that I absolutely revel in. It may well push back. It might sort of rub up some of those old stuffy Academy voters the wrong way somewhat.
Who knows? Who knows? In addition to the screenplay, to me, it's some of the things that were even non-dialogue I really appreciated. Not only is the aforementioned sequence with the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but even when she receives like the initial box with the instructions and she's unpacking it, it felt like one of these YouTube unpacking videos where I was excited to see what was in the box. Let's explore this box together. And she's pulling out the different pieces and has the instructions and the feeding tubes. And okay, there's your 7-day supply for the body that's going to be away in the locker room. I found that whole sequence compelling, and just another reason why this film kind of did it for me.
Yeah, it's wonderfully minimalist packaging. On the one hand, it's kind of like an Acme, Acme branding, like in a Roadrunner cartoon or something. But it also reminds you of sort of Apple's minimalist packaging, which has proved so popular, and also something like another Cronenberg movie, like Existenz, which is kind of like the one where they've got kind of like plug-in PlayStation style consoles that are made of body parts, and you plug it into your own spine and things like that. It's also it's funny because it's so carefully thought out, but then it's presented so brashly, so brightly, so lurid, so unsubtly. There is no ambiguity in this movie whatsoever. Yet, when you unpack what's going on, it has been so carefully thought out, carefully designed, carefully considered that I just absolutely love it. I really do. And I hope people aren't put off by the fact that it is such a full-on kind of horror movie, because it's not scary. It's not that kind of horror. It just doesn't hold back in terms of viscera.
No, and the end. And speaking of viscera, what's Dennis Quaid's son's name again? That's in the Boys.
Oh, I don't know, because I don't watch The Boys. I don't know.
What's his name? Anyhow, he's the star of The Boys, Dennis Quaid's son, and he often talks about how in each subsequent season he gets more goo, more bloodified. Like he's always getting like just gooed. Somebody explodes and he's gooed. And when I saw Dennis Quaid at the end of this getting just gooed, I was thinking his son's going, finally, my dad is getting sprayed with blood. And
absolutely.
I have to do every episode of The Boys.
Oh, sure. I mean, the ending is it's like the prom at Carrie, isn't it? Where she's literally got sort of a bucket of pig's blood over her head. Then another film that is absolutely brilliant is Brian Yuzna's Society, which is this satire of sort of white yuppie Californian living that turns into a complete sort of orgy of body horror. It's wonderful. It's got this wicked sense of humor that was clearly another touch point for Faja here, and is a film that you should definitely check out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, definitely. Because
Yuzna was involved he was the producer on like Reanimator and movie like that. So it's that tone, where it's like full on horror, but it's for comedic purposes as much as anything else. So
yeah, it's coming all the way down to Demi Moore's face crawling across the sidewalk.
Isn't that just a perfect ending? At the end of the day, all she wants is to keep that star, to be the star that she was when they put that star in place. So it's the perfect ending.
Yeah, it was. So James, what unit of measurement are we going to give for the substance?
Oh, well, it's got to be something. It's got to be one of those injections or the stabilizers.
Stabilizers.
How many shots of stabilizer do you want? I'm happy to go first. As I mentioned from the beginning, this is one of my favorite films of the year. I absolutely love it. She has been on my radar since Revenge. Demi Moore has always been a favorite actress. Great to see her back. Margaret Qualley, already noted, one of the most interesting up and coming starlets of today. This ticks all of my boxes. It's as simple as that. I grew up as a Cronenberg kid, and to see that kind of filmmaking being addressed on such a broad canvas by female voices, it was everything I want from a movie like this. It's a full 5 from me. I'm getting the entire week's worth of stabilizer in one go. It's everything.
I don't think I've seen you this giddy recently over any new movie that's come out.
That's probably why. It's just like, oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm going to give it 4.5. I can give halves, as we mentioned. For me to give this kind of movie that high will demonstrate how much I enjoy it. It is a contender for my end of year top 10 list. We'll see where it lands closer to December. But this was a fantastic film. And I just love, we've talked about it before, a film that swings for the fences. This is a film that swings for the fences and it knocks it out of the park. 4.5 star, or 4.5 stabilizing.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, from you, I couldn't wish for more. I'm so happy. Yeah. It's so great. Everybody, if you haven't seen The Substance, get out and see it as soon as you can. If you have seen The Substance, please let us know what you thought of it in the comments, and what other films. I mean, we've name checked a few. Obviously all of Cronenberg's movies, Society, Brian Yuzna, Reanimated, Stuart Gordon, all of that good stuff. Sam Raimi even is the same kind of sensibility. Barbie, Showgirls, you name it. Recommend in the comments, because I think this is part of a legacy that has been going on as long as Hollywood itself.
Go see it. Till next episode.
Bye-bye.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be.